Tansei, good afternoon. I'm Creeson Agecoutay. Welcome to APTN National News. Over the past 2 weeks, there have been 6 deaths involving interaction with law enforcement from across Canada, 4 in the Prairies and 1 in Ontario and 1 in New Brunswick. APTN has learned that all of them are First Nation citizens that include 5 men and 1 woman. Here's T.R. Wheatley with a timeline of the events.
4 of the tragic incidents involve the RCMP, while 2 are city police, 1 from Windsor, Ontario, and the other in Winnipeg, Manitoba. The first incident happened on August 29 in northern Saskatchewan. 31-year-old Jack Piche from Clearwater River Dene Nation was pronounced dead on scene after a Buffalo Narrows RCMP officer struck the man with their police vehicle. The officer was responding to a call at 3:30 a.m. and was traveling from Turner Lake to Buffalo Narrows, Saskatchewan. On August 30th, RCMP in Wetaskiwin, Alberta, shot 15-year-old Haas Lightning Saddleback from Samson Cree Nation. According to the RCMP, he had originally called 911, fearing for his life. RCMP responded to the call, and the teen ran from police where a confrontation happened. 2 officers discharged their weapons. On September 2nd, Tammy Bateman was hit by a Winnipeg police cruiser while it was driving in a park near a homeless encampment along the river. The Indigenous community was swift to respond to this and held a rally to address the issue of police-involved deaths. On September 6th, 57-year-old Jason West was killed by the Windsor police outside a beer store. Police say there were 2 knives involved in the incident. On September 8th, 31-year-old Danny Knife was shot and killed by RCMP in Agecoutay First Nation in Saskatchewan. RCMP say they responded to a call where a 27-year-old female was allegedly assaulted with a machete. That same day on the East Coast in Agecoutay First Nation in New Brunswick, Stephen Iggy Dedham was shot and killed by RCMP after responding to a wellness check. RCMP say a taser was originally used to subdue him, and when that didn't work, they shot him. All of the deaths are still under investigation. T.R. Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Now to that story of a Mi'kmaq man who was shot by RCMP earlier this week in New Brunswick. The family is now speaking out, along with the lead of Agecoutay's community-led intervention unit that is supposed to help RCMP de-escalate wellness checks, who say they were not called by RCMP. Angel Moore reports.
33-year-old Stephen Iggy Dedham was shot by an RCMP officer during a wellness check last Sunday night at his home in Agecoutay First Nation, about 160 kilometers northwest of Fredericton. Amber Joseph is Dedham's sister. She says when she arrived on the scene, officers were not administering first aid.
But when I came in, they didn't have compression on him. He was shot 3 times. The first thing they did was handcuff him and say he was under arrest. He was shot in the chest. He was shot here. He was shot here. He was shot here. I seen the wounds.
Family member Kiora Doucette says,
I didn't understand was after he was shot, why was he handcuffed? Obviously, he wasn't going anywhere. He was down on the ground and they kept the handcuffs on him.
the community is outraged. The Canadian flag was removed from the RCMP detachment in Agecoutay, and signs such as Justice for Iggy, a wellness check turned tragic, red handprints on the garage door, and Do Not Shoot painted on the door. Corporal Hans Olowet of the RCMP New Brunswick says the detachment is fully operating, and the RCMP recognized the deep felt emotions of the community. Kenneth Francis is an elder and says the community is fed up.
To me, it's just a continuation of something that is intrinsically wrong. The frustration is that there doesn't seem to be anything being done about it.
A community-led intervention unit called Indig Watch, which accompanies RCMP on wellness checks to help de-escalate the situation, has been in operation since last December.
They would call us when they go on wellness checks on any kind of expected confrontations. we expect to be called, and we go there and we try to help the RCMP so that it doesn't go out of hand.
Francis says last January, RCMP did call Indige Watch to a wellness check. It was at Didam's house, and the situation was resolved peacefully. But this time, police did not call.
What happened with Iggy is that, and as far as my information tells me, is that we were never contacted.
Didam died soon after he was taken to hospital. Joseph says when she arrived on the scene, she felt intimidated by the police.
I found like he was trying to like intimidate me or like agitate, like instigate. This was the same RCMP officer who had stopped the ambulance from leaving. I had cleared out behind the ambulance, and because I knew they had to leave.
Angel Moore, APTN National News, Agecoutay, also called Halifax.
New Brunswick RCMP have since released a new statement regarding that incident in Agecoutay First Nation. On Thursday afternoon, in a statement from a New Brunswick RCMP Assistant Commissioner, Deanna Hill said, quote, on September 8th, the New Brunswick RCMP were dispatched to a 911 call for service involving a suicidal male armed with a weapon at a residence in Agecoutay. I want to clarify that the information circulating that this call was a wellness check is inaccurate. She goes on to say, at this juncture, I am focused on fully cooperating with the CERT investigation. I am also focused on ensuring public safety in the community of Agecoutay. APTN News spoke with CERT Director Erin Noss and told us the incident is not necessarily what RCMP would classify as a wellness check. She says CERT continues its investigation to determine all the facts. APTN News also requested a comment from Saskatchewan RCMP regarding those other involved RCMP deaths we mentioned. They responded only saying, we are unable to provide further information while Saskatchewan's Serious Incident Response Team is investigating separate incidents. We want to ensure a fair and transparent investigation. The Canadian Human Rights Tribunal hearing on Jordan's Principle wrapped up in Ottawa on Thursday morning. The CHRT has been meeting all week to discuss a non-compliance motion fled by the First Nations Child and Family Caring Society against the federal government. APTN's Fraser Needham brings us the latest.
It was Canada's turn to make closing arguments to the tribunal on Thursday. Justice Department lawyer Dana Anderson started her submission by arguing against the Jordan's Principle complaints mechanism.
ISC's position is that a better choice is to focus our efforts here with the panel on the existing problems that are driving the backlog rather than creating a new mechanism. So dealing with the problems that drive the complaints is what's necessary.
But Caring Society Executive Director Cindy Blackstock says Canada's inability to deal with its own backlog of tens of thousands of Jordan's Principle requests is precisely why an external complaints mechanism is needed.
The result of that is that families who can't get through on a 24-hour line, who have an urgent case in those backlogs that Canada admits to, who has a child who is in palliative care and they can't get the help they need from the 24-hour line because there's nobody there to pick up the call, they don't get the help. That's the default, right? There's no solution for them.
Anderson also told the tribunal the government would like to extend the deadline for dealing with urgent requests from 12 to 24 hours.
But I'm also saying that the cases are becoming so complex that that isn't enough time to do the necessary substantive equality analysis. And so we do need that extra 12 hours.
However, Blackstock says moving in this direction could have dire consequences.
That is unacceptable. They produce no evidence that their backlogs or their volume are related to the timelines, none. And it's really vital that urgent cases be dealt with in an urgent timeline. In fact, even 12 hours for some children is too long.
The tribunal will now make a decision on the Caring Society's non-compliance motion. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
A gathering to elect a new president of the Métis National Council has been postponed. The The election was set to take place in Saskatoon on September 26th. The postponement comes on the heels of the passing of a resolution by Métis Nation Saskatchewan calling for the Métis Nation of Ontario to be removed from MNC immediately. Here's a brief update from Dennis Ward.
MNC President Cassidy Caron, the first elected woman to hold the office, announced in May that she would not be seeking re-election. At the time, Caron said she was early in her pregnancy but wanted to make the announcement to ensure an orderly transition at MNC. A spokesperson for MNC confirms the annual General Assembly and election has been postponed and a new date will be determined by the Board of Governors. One of the members of the Board of Governors, Métis Nation Saskatchewan President Glenn McCallum, recently brought forward a resolution to the MNS Provincial Council calling for the immediate removal of the Métis Nation of Ontario over ongoing concerns with the MNO's membership registry. It also calls on the removal of the office of the MNC President and replace it with a chairperson. The resolution passed by the MNS Provincial Council says MNS will resign from the Métis National Council if the resolution isn't passed by the Métis Nation General Assembly. 3 years ago, the Manitoba Métis Federation withdrew from the Métis National Council. MNC did not respond to a request for an interview with President Caron.
Our Sierra Bettens will tell us about a new program for inner city kids in Winnipeg that is already becoming a hit. That story when we come back in about 3 minutes. Stay with us. Welcome back. A new space for youth in Winnipeg's inner city is offering boxing classes modeled after the 7 sacred teachings. It's an extension of the Spirit Horse initiative, which provides programming for at-risk youth. As reporter Sierra Bettens takes us on a tour of this facility and how it's already becoming a hit.
A vibrant mural representing the 7 sacred teachings welcomes visitors into the Spirit Horse Initiative's new space. In the boxing gym, Henry McKay brings those teachings to life.
Every week we try to go through like a different sacred teaching, and those teachings are kind of like a guideline for people to, try and live a good life, a good balanced life, a grounded life. So it's very important to teach those teachings to our youth.
This week, that teaching is honesty, represented by the Sabe.
Boxing is a very hard kind of sport to do sometimes. So knowing your boundaries and kind of your limits is being honest to who you are, and then setting those boundaries. But then also wanting to kind of push them to kind of better yourself.
Matt Davidson founded the Spirit Horse Initiative to help at-risk youth get on a better path. He uses an action therapy model to engage them in activities and connect them to their community. With the help of the city's Building Safer Communities grant and generous donations, the space is now home to a music production studio and a boxing gym.
Every day we plug away at it and try to make it turn into something beautiful. So we have had artists come in here already and youth to record and learn the programs. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
In Winnipeg, youth crime has seen a notable increase over the past few years. According to the Winnipeg Police Service's 2023 statistical report, youth crime rose by 23.1% over 2022 and 14.3% over 5 years. Davidson believes offering youth guidance and programming is essential to reducing those numbers.
They haven't been jaded. Once you've been jaded by life, it makes it incredibly difficult to transcend and heal past a lot of those things. To hone in on the youth, to hopefully make sure that they don't have to experience the things that some of us have experienced. That is where my passion and energy needs to be.
Mixing physical activity with teachings, youth in the boxing program learn that movement is medicine.
mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical, and how everything's all connected, right? And so this is where they can work on their kind of physical and emotional self here, and then that just betters everything else.
The Spirit Horse Initiative space is open to all interested youth. As time progresses, McKay says they hope to offer drop-in programming. Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Thank you, Sierra. Throughout the week, viewers have been heading over to our aptnnews.ca website to answer our weekly poll. Let's take a look at those results so far. Our first question, we asked whether you support the NDP pulling out of their deal with the Liberals. Over half of you responded yes, with 55%, 26% said no, and 20% said unsure. Our next question we asked, following the 6 Indigenous deaths involving law enforcement, we wanted to know your confidence level in the ability of the current oversight bodies who investigate police-involved deaths. The majority of you, 71%, said you were not confident in those oversight bodies, 12% said somewhat, 10% said unsure, and only 7% said they were very confident with the current oversight bodies. Lastly, we wanted to know whether you believe the collection of race-based data would help address systemic racism in policing. Just over half of you, at 56%, believe it would address systemic racism in policing. 22% said unsure, and 22% said no. Thank you to everyone who took the time to respond. If you haven't had a chance to answer these questions, you can head over to our website at www.aptnnews.ca to share your thoughts. There is now more women in policing roles than 30 years ago. Our Sierra Bettens will be back again with that story. Stick around.
Over on the East Coast, Charlottetown 20, Fredericton 23. Nain 9, La Grande River 13. Quebec City 20, Val d'Or 23. Toronto 23, Sarnia 22. 24 in Timmins, Sioux Lookout 19. God's Lake 20, Puckatawagan 19. Winnipeg 22, Dauphin 21. 14 in Regina, North Battleford 14 as well. Larange 12, Uranium City Sunny and 10. 21 in Fort McMurray, High Level 20. Lethbridge 20, Red Deer 18. Campbell River 16, Kamloops 23. 16 in Prince George, Fort Nelson 19. Watson Lake 15, Rock River 8. Wati 18, Norman Wells 18 as well. Sachs Harbor 1, Colville Lake 12. Chesterfield 7, Baker Lake 9. And Clyde River 6 and Arctic Bay 5.
Women make up 23% of Canada's police force. That number is just up from 9% 30 years ago, according to Statistics Canada. This Thursday on National Police Women's Day, they were honored for their service and commitment. Reporter Sierra Bettens caught up with Corporal Crystal Caribou to talk about her experiences as a First Nation police officer.
September 12th is National Police Women Day, and today I'm joined by Corporal Crystal Caribou, who comes from Matthias Colomb Cree Nation. Crystal, to start off, I'm curious to know, what made you interested in a career in policing?
I've always had an interest since I was a teenager. I noticed there was not much of a police presence when it came to Indigenous representation in the RCMP, and I always had an interest in the back of my head growing up that maybe one day I'll be a police officer so that I can represent my community and be a representative in the RCMP as well. So that was where the thought kind of started, and then as I got older, I realized I wanted to finish school before I, pursued that career choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, historically, Indigenous peoples haven't always had the best relationship with the RCMP. How have you worked to, rebuild that trust as an RCMP officer?
Growing up myself, I had also a negative view of policing, and I wanted to know why and where those thoughts were coming from, and I wanted to make a change, make a difference, and that was one of the reasons why, as to why I joined the RCMP, just to figure out for myself, can I make a difference, and can I see why I'm having such a negative exposure or thoughts about the RCMP. And when I got in, I realized RCMP officers or police officers in general, we get exposed to a lot of things that people don't see on a daily basis. So growing up, back to what I said about me having a negative experience, a lot of times it was probably maybe the officer was having a bad day, or, you know, we're going to traumatic things. So being on the other side of the door now and being in that police officer role, I kind of have a better understanding as to all the things that we have to go through as police officers. And there are hard days, you know, we're exposed to a lot of things. But at the end of the day, I always remember, you know, I chose this career to make a difference and to hopefully be a positive role model and build those relationships in the community. And that's what I take out most days, is hopefully I helped someone out today, and hopefully I made a difference just by being who I am as an Indigenous police officer. And I've really noticed too, with speaking to community members where I've been, that a lot of them feel, I think, more at ease or more willing to come forward and talk to me because I maybe look like them, or they know I'm from northern Manitoba as well. So I think they realize, oh, she probably understands. Which I do, and at the end of the day, we are just here to help.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say has been the most rewarding aspect of your job so far?
Just knowing I'm helping someone and hopefully making a difference wherever I go, and being that safe net for people and being there for when people need help. I could be one of those people that show up and maybe make a difference or help them, keep people safe.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, if you were to give advice to an Indigenous woman who's interested in a career in policing, what advice would you give them?
I would say you're not gonna know unless you try, so don't be afraid. If you are afraid, that's a normal feeling, but I know you could do it, and it's possible. Any choice or career that you want to do, it's possible. You just need to do some hard work, have a positive attitude about it, and confidence, and you learn as you go. Even in my career right now as a police officer, I'm still learning, and you're gonna always learn and grow, which is good. And that's one of the other reasons why I chose this career, is I knew I was always gonna be learning and challenging myself for the better.
Well, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us today, Crystal, and yeah, best of luck with your career. Back to you in studio.
Thank you, Sierra. And that's your midday newscast for this Friday, September 13th. Ihai, our Dennis Ward will be back in a few hours for your evening newscast with news stories. Make sure to join us then. From our reporters and camera people across the country, and from our HQ in Winnipeg, Masicho, Miigwech, hi hi. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again. Exe.